What if hunger could teach dignity, and a stranger's silence could change the fate of a whole street? The night tasted of smoke and boiled oil. The restaurant's rear door breathed heat and spices into the alley, where the city kept its secrets under flickering lamps. She stood by the bins, her palms tucked in the sleeves of a faded sweatshirt, eyes fixed on the crates where leftovers sometimes lived. Her name was Amara. The city never bothered to remember names like hers, but she remembered everything, the shape of a tin bracelet on her wrist, the only thing her mother left, and the promise etched silently into its dented rim. Keep walking. That bracelet was her small star. She touched it when the fear pressed like a stone. A waiter stepped out with a black bag, not tight like a fist. He sighed, looked left and right, and tossed it into the steel bin. The clap echoed like a door closing. Amara waited for the hiss of the door to finish, and for the hum of voices to return inside. She lowered the lid. The smell rose, a mix of pepper, stale bread, and lemon bones. She reached in, heartbeat loud, fingers careful as if reading braille on a wall. She found a crust, still warm. She lifted it to her face. Steam touched her lip. She closed her eyes and saw not a feast, just a pause, just a breath. "Hey!" A voice cracked against the brick. "Move along, not here." The manager stood in the doorway with a napkin still tucked in his collar, like a little flag of pride. His name was Kofi Mensah, but people in his world called him Sir. Sir liked the sound. He stepped into the alley and waved at the security camera mounted high like a cold eye. A couple from a bright car noticed the commotion and slowed. 2 delivery riders paused, helmets in hand. The alley was a stage, and he loved an audience. "Not on my property," he said, raising his chin. "You people think kindness falls from the sky." "I'm sorry," Amara whispered. "I'll leave." She held the crust like a coin that might pay for a little quiet. "Drop it," he barked. Her fingers loosened. The bread fell and rolled toward the gutter. The couple by the car watched with the bland curiosity of people between songs. One of the riders looked away. The other stared, jaw tight. "Say thank you," Kofi demanded, "for letting you go." "Thank you," she said. The words tasted like chalk. Louder. "Thank you." He smiled at the camera and straightened his jacket. "People need to learn. If you feed this, it returns," he told the couple with a wink, as if hunger were a stray dog and he, the wise man of the street. He turned and went in. Laughter spilled from the warm belly of the restaurant. The door shut with a click that felt like a verdict. Amara swallowed and crouched to pick up the crust from the gutter. Her hand shook. She wiped it against her sleeve and took a small bite. It was cold now, but it was something. She pressed her thumb against the tin bracelet. "Keep walking," it seemed to say, even through a wall. Across the street, a man in a faded cap lowered his gaze from under the brim. He leaned against a rusted taxi like it had been his friend for years. He had a bag of tools by his foot and grease at his knuckles, the scent of engine oil clinging like a second skin. The street knew him as Malik, the mechanic who came when engines coughed and old vans refused to sing. He looked ordinary, even forgettable, and that was the point. Not one of the faces in the alley imagined he was anything other than his cap and his tired shoes. He watched Amara pass the crust to a stray dog that had limped out from behind the bins. She split the crust in 2. She kept the smaller half. "Why would someone hungry share that?" thought one rider. "Because dignity does not break where bread breaks," thought Malik. But he said nothing. He had learned long ago that the most important truths travel better in silence. Amara walked away from the bright smells and the camera eye. She didn't look back. The dog followed at a respectful distance, as if it knew that some people carry storms inside their ribs. She slept in the women's shelter when there was space, and by the market stalls when there was not. Tonight the shelter had said, "Come tomorrow, we are full," with kind eyes that still closed the door. She found the awning of a spice cellar, dropped her small bag like a seed, and sat with her knees close, the bracelet warm against her skin. The city hummed and cooled, like a vast animal finding sleep. She closed her eyes. A shoe tapped near her knee. She opened them to a uniform and a clipboard. "No sleeping here," the city officer said. "You cannot block the stall." "It's night," Amara said. "I will move before dawn." "You can't stay, that's the rule." His voice carried no malice, just the weary rhythm of repeating policy until it sounded like weather. He pointed toward the shelter with his pen. "Try again." "I did," she said. He looked at the bracelet and looked away quickly, as if shame were a flash. "Sorry," he said softly, quiet enough that it did not feel like a law speaking. He walked on, his pen tapping the clipboard in a small, restless beat. She gathered her bag and stood. The dog rose too. "You should find a better person," she told it. The dog wagged a single slow wag, the way trust begins. Behind the row of stalls, Malik adjusted the strap of his bag and followed at a distance that was careful, not creepy. There's a way of watching a person that neither corners them nor abandons them. He kept to it. He had once learned to watch from windows he could not open. That was in another life, when the newspapers called him a ghost shareholder and the court documents turned his name into initials. In the morning, the city smelled of diesel and bread. Amara took a part-time sweep job at the bus terminal. She moved with quiet economy, dustpan and broom like instruments of a slower symphony. Her pay was a handful of coins, enough for a bowl of millet and a cup of tea colored with milk. She ate in small bites, as if teaching her stomach to trust again. She kept one coin aside in a folded paper at the bottom of her bag. She had a plan as thin as thread. Save a little, learn a skill, find a room with a door that closed from the inside. Some plans do not need to be loud to be true. "Little sister," the tea woman said, "your bracelet is sweet." "It belonged to my mother," Amara replied. "What did it say?" "It says, keep walking." She smiled, and that smile carried a soft gold. The tea woman smiled back and added more milk. At noon, the restaurant lane became a river. Delivery vans docked and undocked. Waiters moved like fish in clean currents, and the manager's voice kept the tide. Kofi oversaw the new patio, a stage under glass lamps. He liked the mystery of smoked salt, the prestige of imported vinegar, the power of a reservation list that functioned like a gate. When he spoke to his staff, praise came in teaspoons and corrections in ladles. "Remember," he said, clapping his hands, "image is currency. Waste is theft. Kindness is staged, you understand?" They nodded. He loved to tell the story of how he had raised the restaurant's rating by a star. It had been a dance of influencer dinners, projected humility, and ruthless control. He didn't mention the vendors he squeezed or the staff he made examples of. He believed nature rewarded the firm hand. That afternoon, a new dishwasher started. Skinny, quiet, eyes like he had seen a storm and chosen not to speak of it. He introduced himself as Musa. He wore boots too big and kept his gaze on his hands. The others thought he might be shy. Kofi thought, good, shy men do not argue. Musa had grease in lines the hot water couldn't take. He moved with the efficiency of someone who had dismantled engines to the small screws and could rebuild without a book. He listened. He watched. He took note of the way Kofi talked to the camera when any conflict occurred, how he angled compassion for the lens. "Who is that?" whispered a waiter. "New boy," said the bartender. "Don't worry, he'll learn fast." Musa learned the rhythm of plates and the sway of the pass, how the head chef cursed at overcooked steaks by breathing through his nose and saying, "Again." He watched the alley door. He watched Amara return in the evenings and keep her distance, not from shame, but from the knowledge of how power enjoys a witness. He watched her share. He watched Kofi rehearse kindness like a line in a play when donors visited with cameras. He said nothing. The next week tilted. A rumor began, the kind that grows feet in kitchens. Someone was stealing premium cuts. Not the cheap parts, but the beautiful centerpieces, the ones with names that look good on menus. Kofi gathered the staff by the back door. He paced like a general who enjoyed the fear he cast. "We have a thief," he declared. "I will not call the police yet. I will give the thief a chance to confess." No one spoke. The dog outside barked once, an accidental punctuation. "I see everything," Kofi said, nodding at the camera. "Before the night ends, I'll know." He smoothed his shirt and left them in a silence that felt staged. Musa kept washing. Soap stung skin that had been split by wrenches and bolts. He thought of a night years back when a man who loved him like a son stopped answering calls. He thought of another man who smiled like a friend and shoved papers under his nose with clauses like traps. He thought of courtrooms colder than hospitals and of headlines that called him a fraud when all he had done was trust the wrong man. He had built engines for farms that needed water and created filters for neighborhoods that the city forgot. Then the friend who smiled had used his signature to loop money into his own hands, leaving Musa to answer a rain of questions. When it all fell apart, Musa changed his name to Malik again and stopped explaining himself to anyone. He bought a small garage with cash and fixed what he could fix. He had a mind like a blueprint and a heart like a door he kept partly shut. He kept it shut because when he had opened it, the city took things. That evening, the alley gathered a familiar crowd of motion. Amara approached, eyes on the ground but attention spread like a net, ready to catch trouble before it hit her face. The dog limped at her heel. She found the courage to ask the tea woman for the stale rolls she sometimes saved. "Take two," the tea woman said. "You look like the person who shares." She wrapped them in paper like a small ceremony. Amara turned into the alley and nearly collided with Kofi, who stepped out just then, holding a white tray like a prop. The couple in the bright car had returned for the patio experience and paused again, like fans eager for a second season. The camera blinked red. "We meet again," Kofi said, loudly enough for the lens. "Begging is not allowed. But today, I will do something generous so people learn the difference between mercy and chaos." He placed a single roll on the tray and held it out, jaw set like a hero in a poster. The roll was smaller than the ones wrapped in paper in Amara's hand, but the act was larger than the roll, and that was the point on camera. Amara looked at the tray, and then at the dog, and then at the wrapped paper she had hidden behind her bag. She understood. This was not food. This was theater. She felt heat rise in her chest, then cool resolve. "Thank you, but I already have bread," she said, voice even. She lifted the paper slightly, enough to show and hide in one motion. "Please give this to someone else." Kofi's smile faltered for the briefest second, like a ribbon cut by wind. The couple turned their heads, the way people do when a note goes flat in a song. "You refused?" he said. "After I offered." He looked at the camera like a man betrayed by the very narrative he had written. "Others need it," she said. "I'm fine." The dog wagged twice as if to confirm. Kofi recovered. "Your pride is loud," he said lightly. "But hunger has a way of teaching silence. Remember our last meeting?" He gestured to the bins. The couple smiled again, relief settling like a napkin. The camera kept its red eye open. That night the rumor grew arms. A waiter whispered, "It's her, that girl. She sneaks around the back." Another said, "Don't be foolish. She doesn't even go in." The bartender said, "Thieves have helpers. Maybe the new dishwasher. He's quiet, too quiet." The head chef said nothing. He watched the meat count and the paper trail and saw a gap that looked like a signature he recognized. He had signed inventory with Kofi for months and had learned the place where numbers turned slippery. Close to closing, Kofi entered the dry store and pulled a notebook from behind the spice tins. He wrote something fast, then tucked it back. He returned to the kitchen and announced, "We will do a sweep." He led them to the alley and positioned himself under the camera. "Empty your pockets," he commanded. He started with the new boy. Musa turned his pockets inside out, a folded piece of paper with engine notes, a nut bolt, a coin, a small wrench hanging on a loop. Kofi held up the bolt like proof. "What is this?" he demanded. "A bolt," Musa said. "From the restaurant?" Kofi asked. "From my bag," Musa answered. A murmur ran through the staff like a wind through leaves. "Check the girl," Kofi ordered, pointing to Amara, who had come to return a cup to the tea woman. "I'm not staff," she said. "You are trouble," he replied. "You return nightly like a habit." He gestured to the security guard. "Politely ask her to open the bag." The guard, who had a face that wanted to be kind, approached. "Sister," he said softly, "can you just... so we finish this and go?" Amara looked at the people, then at Musa's steady silence, then at the dog, who had lain down but watched intently. She opened her bag. Inside were a thin scarf, a bar of laundry soap, the folded paper with her coin, and the rolls wrapped in paper. On top of the rolls lay something that made the air stop, a vacuum-sealed cut of meat, perfect and expensive, like a jewel out of place. Amara froze. The guard gasped. The couple from the car leaned out of their seats. Kofi placed a hand dramatically on his chest. "You see," he exclaimed, "waste becomes theft. I suspected all along." "That's not mine," Amara said. Her voice did not tremble. It went quiet like a river narrowing to a canyon. I don't even go near your cold room." "Then who?" Kofi asked. "The dog?" He smiled sadly for the camera. "It breaks the heart." Musa stepped closer, eyes on the meat, not on the girl. "Where did you find this?" he asked her. "In my bag," she said, "but I did not put it there." Kofi lifted his palms to the camera. "Do I call the police?" he said to no one and to everyone. "Or do I show mercy?" He turned to the couple. "What do you think?" "Mercy," the woman said softly, enjoying the part she had been cast in. Musa looked at the camera angle, the height, the coverage of the alley. He noted the blind spot by the spice crates outside where the waste bins partially blocked the lens. He followed the math of feet and seconds. He made a decision. "Check the camera," he said. "We will," Kofi replied, tone smooth. "But I must protect my business. Girl, return the meat and leave. You are banned from this alley. Men, you are witnesses." The staff nodded in a cloud of assent. Amara folded the bag closed and held it to her chest, then set it gently on the ground and stepped back. "I did nothing wrong," she whispered to the bracelet. "Keep walking," it said without sound. "But where?" She turned under the weight of all the eyes and walked out of the alley with the dog trailing, the coin heavy as a stone in paper. The city's night opened wide, an animal again, but this time its teeth showed. If a person's truth is a candle, what happens when a hand keeps trying to pinch it out? Morning brought heat early. Amara went to the bus terminal and found her broom returned to the wall hook like a friend waiting. The supervisor said, "You look tired." She smiled and swept. Each stroke was a way to hear her own breath. Each corner cleaned was a corner of her mind cleared. She took a break on the concrete step and counted the coins not by number but by hope. She remembered the meat in her bag like a bad dream. She remembered Kofi's face, bright with the thrill of a stage. She remembered the mechanic in the cap, who had saved her a look that felt like a blanket laid on a shivering child. She did not know his name. She only knew the dog liked him. The tea woman brought her a small bun. "For the road," she said. "I will pay later," Amara said. "You will pay by staying kind," the tea woman replied and went back to her stall. At noon, the city shook under the sun, and the alley prepared for a donor lunch that would be filmed. Kofi polished phrases the way he polished cutlery. "Community outreach," he said to the head chef. "Sustainability," he said to the bartender. "Dignity," he said to himself, tasting the word. Musa kept washing, but he took a moment before the lunch to slip into the small office where the camera feed backed up to a hard drive that claimed to be reliable. He asked the security guard a practical question about wiring. The guard, grateful to talk to someone who seemed to understand, let him in. Musa traced the cable with his gaze, followed it to a splitter, followed the splitter to a second drive, older, left plugged in out of habit. He pressed play. The previous night unwound. He watched the alley in shades of gray. He saw Amara's bag on the ground. He saw Kofi step out of frame and reappear. He saw the head of the security guard turn to greet a delivery driver. In the 3 heartbeats of distraction, a hand entered the edge of the blind spot and slid something into the open bag. The hand wore a ring with a square face. Musa had seen that ring point orders like a small hammer. "Friend," the guard said from the door, "we are not allowed." Musa raised his palm gently. "You did not see this," he said, voice flat like a road. The guard swallowed. Musa copied the segment onto a small thumb drive he kept with his wrench. He slipped it into the little pocket of his pants. He returned to the sink. How long should a man watch before he decides to step into the light? The lunch began. Donors arrived in clean linen, local leaders in crisp collars, influencers with cameras like jewelry. Kofi greeted them with the smile he had practiced, the handshake that made people feel chosen. He offered a speech by the patio. The sun filtered through woven shades. "Our city is a tapestry," he declared. "We are a family. At this restaurant, we take responsibility." He gestured to a table of prepared donations, labeled boxes of day-old bread, staff photos taped to the front like proof of caring. He loved the idea of caring as a brand. "We have had challenges," he continued, "but we meet them with mercy." On the sidewalk outside the gate, Amara stopped. She hadn't intended to return. She had meant to walk on and let the city swallow the alley until it was only a bruise she no longer touched, but the tea woman had insisted. Go stand by the street, she had said. Not for him, for yourself. So Amara stood and watched through the open gate, her bag held close. Musa dried his hands and stepped to the edge of the patio, hat in his fingers, body like a question mark that had become a straight line. Sir, he said to Kofi respectfully, may I say something? Kofi turned, surprised and annoyed. He did not like freestyles in his shows. Later, he said, smiling at the donors, we have a rhythm. It will be brief, Musa said. The head chef watched Musa's face, not his hat. He saw a courtroom in the set of that jaw, a man who had learned patience under a weight. Kofi gestured with a tired benevolence. Fine, speak. Musa nodded to the guests. Yesterday there was an accusation. A young woman was shamed. A theft was staged. He reached into his pocket and held up the thumb drive. There is a recording. Kofi's smile tightened. We do not air dirty laundry, he said, smooth as oil. One of the donors, a woman whose foundation funded camera systems for market safety, leaned forward. If there is a record, we should see it, she said. Her voice had the pleasant firmness of a person used to hearing yes. Kofi laughed lightly. Our friend is new here, he said. He doesn't know our protocols. Show it, the head chef said, softly but clearly. Kofi glanced at him, surprised. The chef's voice carried weight in the kitchen family. The donors sensed friction and leaned in like spectators at a match, hoping for a good rally but not a bruise. The security guard shifted, then went to the office. He returned with a tablet, hesitation in his fingers. He played the clip on the patio screen they used for menu promotions. The alley appeared. The air stilled. In the gray light, the bag sat open. The hand slid in, left the package, withdrew. The ring flashed. The donors turned as one toward Kofi's hand. The square face of his ring caught the sun and winked back like a guilty friend. Silence rang like a bell. Kofi lifted his chin. That is not me, he said too quickly. This is edited. Anyone can fake. Who else has your ring? The bartender asked, incredulous. Why would I do such a thing? Kofi demanded. His eyes bore into the camera, craving the old power of narrative. Image, the head chef replied, the word exiting his mouth like a diagnosis. You needed a villain to be the hero. The donors' faces cooled as if a breeze had passed. The foundation woman looked at the gate. Outside, Amara stood, not coming in, not going away. Her bag was closed. Her bracelet shone in a small, stubborn way. Musa took a breath and felt the old heat in his chest, the one that rose when a man lied with the confidence of a stage actor. He set the hat on his head and removed it again, a habit that burned off the first match of anger. Then he looked at Kofi with a calm he had earned in storms. I know men like you, he said quietly. I used to sign papers for them. Kofi snorted, eager for a turn. Who are you? He asked, a smirk forming. A dishwasher with opinions? Musa considered the sun, then stepped forward. My name is Malik Adeyemi, he said. The name slid into the air like a blade long hidden in cloth. Some of you might remember it, others may not. I prefer not. Two of the donors blinked. Recognition crossed their faces like a shadow of a flock. Adeyemi, the engineer who built the modular pumps for remote farms, the entrepreneur whose company imploded under a scandal that later turned out to be manufactured by his own CFO. He had vanished after the court cleared him with a line so quiet the papers put it on the 4th page. People remembered dirt louder than soap. Kofi laughed too loudly. A story, he cried. We all love a story, very dramatic. Not a story, Malik said. A truth. The foundation woman leaned forward. If you are who you say, she asked, why are you washing dishes here? Because I wanted to see without being seen, he replied. Because men who love stage lights behave differently when they believe the audience is small. Because I made a promise. If I ever had the means again, I would not throw money at a problem from a billboard. I would stand in the alley. Means? Kofi said, seizing. What means? Malik looked at the staff first, not the donors. For the last 2 years, he said, voice steady, I have been buying small things that big men ignore. A garage, a stall, a distributor, a stake in the market's solar project, and this restaurant's debt. A murmur rippled like a fabric shaken once. Kofi swallowed. You? He asked, the word thin. I am the silent partner your banker calls the helpful investor, Malik said. Your last renovation? You did not cover it with reviews and charm. You covered it with my bridge loan, packaged by a man who told you not to worry about the fine print. Kofi's face drained, then flushed. You're lying, he said, but it sounded like please. The head chef looked at Malik with something like relief. It makes sense, he said. The debt. Someone was unusually patient. I am patient with people, Malik said, not with cruelty. He turned to the donors. Keep eating, he suggested, oddly gentle. You came for food and community. You can still have both. But first, the alley. They followed his gaze. Amara stood at the gate. Her eyes were wide but not pleading. She wore the same clean shirt, the same bracelet, and a new calm that came from being seen without being dragged to a stage. Invite her in, the foundation woman said, breaking the spell. Properly. Kofi opened his mouth. No sound came. The bartender, whose mother kept a stall near the bus terminal, set down his towel and walked to the gate. He bowed a little, like a cousin. Sister, he said to Amara, please come. Amara hesitated. The dog wagged at the threshold. She stepped in and stood near the edge as if the floor could tilt. Malik approached her, stopping at a respectful distance. He removed his cap fully, as if meeting a person of rank. You were wronged, he said. That will be made right. I don't want trouble, Amara replied, voice small but unwavering. I want quiet work and a door. There is a seat inside, Malik said, but first, your name? Amara, she said. Amara, he repeated, letting the sound sit in the air like a promise. Here is what should happen. The person who publicly shamed you should publicly make it right. Kofi cleared his throat, found himself, and reached for an old tool. On behalf of the restaurant. Not the restaurant, Malik said, eyes never leaving Kofi. You. Kofi's gaze flicked to the camera. It was still recording, but he did not own the story anymore. He looked at the donors, then at the staff, then at the girl whose quiet steadiness made his throat feel tight. Pride battled panic. Image tried to climb a rope that had burned in the clip. I apologize, he said, the words reluctant as bad children. I misjudged. The stress. Do not blame stress, the head chef said softly. Blame hunger for stage lights. Kofi exhaled, a small surrender. I wronged you, he said to Amara directly. The truth finally aligned in a simple line. Forgive me. Amara looked at him for a measured moment. I do not carry your anger, she said. I carry my own life. She glanced at Malik. Can I leave now? Eat first, the bartender said, surprising himself. He brought her a plate, not charity, not a stage, just lunch. The dog lay outside the gate, tail fluttering as if it too felt the city shift. The donors resumed their seats, but their talk had a new flavor, less of trends and more of terms like fairness, camera audit, hiring. The foundation woman made notes. The head chef excused himself and returned with a sealed envelope. He handed it to Malik. The accounts, he said. All of them. Kofi watched his kingdom recalculate around him as resilience revealed itself not as control but as care. Just when the air began to sweeten, a shadow crossed the patio like a cloud. A man in a crisp suit, sunglasses polished, entered by the side gate with the confidence of a person who never encountered closed doors. Two other men followed at polite distance. The head chef's jaw hardened. The bartender whispered a name that made the donors exchange the kinds of looks reserved for men who collect debts and favors with equal appetite. Mr. Arko, Kofi said, relief and fear braided. You are early. I am on time, Arko replied. His smile did not reach his eyes. He removed his sunglasses with a slow grace. And you, my friend, are late. Malik watched the movements, saw the invisible wires tug. He understood. Arko was the real creditor. The bridge loan had a hidden bridge behind it. We are in the middle of a lunch, Kofi began. You are in the middle of many things, Arko said. He nodded at the donors as if acknowledging a stage he could take if he wished. Small delay. Simple matter. My men will take a quick look in the office. For what? The head chef asked. Paper, Arko said. Signatures, ownership reports. He waved a hand. Boring. The security guard looked at Malik, then at Kofi, then at the office door. The guard's hand drifted toward his phone as if it wanted to dial someone braver. Malik stepped forward. Calm settled around him like a jacket. This establishment is under review, he said to Arko, polite as if greeting a guest. There has been misconduct. There will be changes. Arko's gaze slid to Malik and returned with curiosity. And you are? A silent partner, Malik said evenly. No longer silent. Arko's smile widened. Ah, the helper. He glanced at Kofi with a small, "You never told me" lift of eyebrows. Helpers must know their place. What place is that? Malik asked. Behind men who make things happen, Arko replied, still smiling. Like me. The donors shifted, some offended, some intrigued, all aware that the lunch had become something else. The foundation woman pulled out her phone and opened a recording app, not because she loved drama, but because documentation rescues memory when lies arrive. Arko's men moved toward the office. The head chef stepped subtly into their path. The bartender stood beside him. The security guard, whose day usually involved asking teenagers to stop skateboarding near the patio, felt his chest drum. Do not touch the recordings, Malik said. His voice was quiet, but had an edge the room had not yet heard from him. They are evidence. Of what? Arko asked, bored. He twirled his sunglasses by one temple. A girl in a loaf? He smirked. There are bigger loaves. He nodded at his men again. They stepped. The head chef squared. The bartender's hand closed around a corkscrew, then thought better and set it down. The security guard finally did the thing his hand had wanted to do all morning and dialed. The siren in his ear was the dispatcher's voice, brisk, familiar, mercifully calm. Malik placed his cap on the table and spoke to Arko in a tone built in boardrooms and alleys both. You have two options, he said. Leave now, or stay and be part of a public investigation into the harassment of a vulnerable person, the manipulation of evidence, and the coercion of a small business. Arko laughed and gestured to the donors. Public? He asked. Do you think I fear public? Public eats from my hand when I give free t-shirts at the football field. Public forgets faster than water dries on a stone. Memory is a muscle, Malik said. Today, we train it. For the first time, Arko's smile hesitated. He looked at the foundation woman's phone. He looked at the head chef's stance. He looked at the security guard's straightened shoulders. He looked at Amara, who had taken her first bite, unhurried, eyes on no one, carrying dignity like a lantern. He performed the quick math of risk. 1 hour, he said finally, soft. Then we talk. We talk at the station, the security guard said, surprising himself again. He heard his own voice like someone else's bravery borrowed his throat. I called. Arko's eyes cooled. He put on his sunglasses and nodded as if the whole thing were a pleasant detour. He turned and left with the men, the gate swallowing them like a line swallowed a fish that was too big for lunch anyway. The tension snapped like a string. People exhaled. Kofi sagged against a chair. The head chef closed his eyes for a moment, as if in gratitude for the quiet between storms. Malik picked up his cap and looked at Amara. You said you wanted work, he said, and a door. I did, she replied, careful not to let hope outrun sense. My garage needs a bookkeeper, Malik said. Someone honest. It is not glamorous. It is clean work. Part-time to start, then full if you wish. I will pay you fairly. We will put your name on a lease for a small room near the market, today, with the foundation's help if needed. Amara blinked as if the light had shifted. Why me? She asked. I am nobody. No, Malik said gently. You shared bread you did not have. You told a man drunk on cameras that you were fine and meant it. You did not let his story eat your own. That is somebody. Amara looked at her bracelet, the tin warm and stubborn. Keep walking, it repeated. Maybe walking sometimes meant stepping through a door. Yes, she said simply. The foundation woman smiled. We will guarantee the lease for the first 3 months, she said. Condition, you promise to show up for yourself. I will, Amara said. Kofi cleared his throat. And the restaurant? He asked, small for the first time. What happens to me? Malik regarded him without malice. You will step down for now. The head chef will take interim control with staff council. You will attend a review and training about codes of conduct. If the team wants you back, you come back under a contract with clear accountability. Kofi looked like a man who had been told the ocean exists beyond the river he loved. He nodded slowly. I did harm, he said softly. I wanted to be seen as good more than I wanted to be good. The head chef put a hand on his shoulder, not to comfort but to steady. We will cook, he said. We will feed. We will not perform kindness. We will do it. The police arrived like an exhale into order. Statements were taken, the clip was saved in places where no one's finger could reach. The donors stayed for too long, but they stayed like neighbors, not tourists. The day ended with plates empty and eyes a little clearer. Evenings returned with their smoke and oil. The alley shifted its posture, the bins still clanged, the camera still blinked. But the staff had learned a new habit, to look beyond the lens. The bartender kept a bowl of water for the dog. The security guard's clipboard held not only rules, but names attached to faces he now sought to learn. The head chef tightened inventory and loosened the fear that had made people brittle. Amara's days changed shape. She swept the terminal in the mornings because finishing what you start is a kind of wealth. At noon, she walked to Malik's garage. The place smelled of rubber and rain and a clean kind of metal. Malik showed her the books, the invoices, the way money tells the truth if you ask it the right questions. Numbers are like engines, he said. If one piece lies, the whole stutters. She learned quickly. She liked the feel of the stamp, the rhythm of entries, the quiet satisfaction of balanced lines. In the evenings, she returned sometimes to the restaurant alley, but now she used the front door like a person whose name a host knows. She paid for tea. She fed the dog with her own bread, fresh. Once, when the sky was violet and the first star argued with the last streetlight, she found Malik under the hood of a small truck, shoulders tense. She stood nearby and waited. Some pains need space to come out of the body. "What happened to your friend?" she asked finally. He did not look up. "He was like a brother," he said. "He borrowed my name and wore it like a mask while he did harm. He apologized later, the way a person apologizes for rain at a funeral. Then he moved away, helpful to others with someone else's tools. I held on to being angry like it could fix something. It did not. It only kept a room in my chest dark." "And now?" she asked. "I opened the window," he said. He wiped his hands and looked at her. "Sometimes a little, sometimes more." She nodded. "My mother used to say, 'Keep walking, but don't drag your house behind you.'" He smiled, a real one, the kind that does not need camera light, weeks folded into each other like clean laundry. The room near the market opened to Amara with a key that clicked like a small song. She placed her bag inside for the first time and did not have to keep one hand on it. She hung the bracelet on a nail by the door when she slept so it could rest too. One afternoon, a letter slid under that door. The paper was heavy, the ink neat. It carried the scent of a different kind of office. Amara opened it and read words that made her knees soften. Her mother's name appeared, then a date from years back, then a line about a savings account forgotten in the wake of a hospital bill. The amount was not a fortune, but it was more than the coins in paper and the rolls in brown wrap. It was enough to pay for a class, to start a small thing that breathed on its own. Attached was a note. "We had been looking for you." The envelope bore a return address that dangled an old story by a thin thread. She sat on the bed and held the letter like a delicate plate. The dog, who sometimes slept on the rug with permission, lifted his head. The bracelet on the nail watched with its single silent eye. If a letter can build a bridge, what do you do when the river below carries someone else's pain? She carried the letter to the garage. Malik read it and leaned back. "You could return to the past," he said carefully. "You could knock on certain doors." "What would you do?" she asked. "I will tell you what I did," he said. "I put down roots where my feet stood. Then, when I was steady, I wrote one letter, to the man who hurt me. Not to forgive him, not to punish him, to tell him I was done carrying his shadow. Then I stopped writing to him and I started writing to the people in front of me." She nodded slowly. She looked at the envelope again. "This account was opened by my mother," she said. "She wanted me to have it." "Then honor her," he replied, "not by chasing ghosts, but by feeding what is alive." That evening, Amara stood in her small room under the quiet fan and thought of big choices spoken in small words. She held a pen. She wrote a note to the address on the letter, simple and firm. "Thank you. I will claim what my mother set aside, and I will not reopen the door that hurt us." She signed her name like laying a brick. Then she folded the paper and placed it with the others she would deliver tomorrow, the small stack of invoices and receipts that kept her life squared and simple. At the restaurant, life flowed with new channels. Kofi attended workshops with people who did not care about his ring. He came back with fewer gestures and more listening. The staff voted to keep him in a junior role for a season, a lesson stitched with thread strong enough to hold. The head chef ran the floor with a kind firmness that built pride like a steady wall. At the next donor lunch, there were no cameras by the gate. There was a notice on the wall, weekly food distribution schedule with a list of nearby shelters, contact names, and times that matched reality. The foundation woman helped install a new camera with an independent backup, but she also funded a staff welfare fund that reduced the quiet desperation that leads to small thefts. Mercy found structure. Charity learned to wear boots. On a Sunday afternoon, when the city's noise stretched out like a cat in sun, Malik stood in the garage doorway and watched the street. People moved in easy patterns. The dog dozed. Amara swept, not because the floor was dirty, but because the motion soothed thinking. She paused and looked up. "You could buy a bigger place," she said. "You could hire more people." "I could," he replied. "I might, but not to be big, to be useful." She smiled. "Useful is big." He considered this and nodded. "There is something else," he said, voice light but serious. "A women's drivers cooperative is starting near the terminal. They need a small office. Your room is small. The market has one above the spice shop. I thought, if you wish, you could run their books too. It pays a little more." She laughed, a sound like water over small stones. "I said I wanted quiet work," she teased. "You will have noise," he conceded. "The good kind." She looked at her bracelet on her wrist. She had begun to wear it in the day again, not as a weight but as a line to a past that did not own her present. "Yes," she said, "I will do it." The street carried their words away and brought back a breeze. The city animal slept and woke and slept again. Under its ribs, small doors kept opening. If kindness is a seed, it grows best where pride has been turned into good soil. Moral: real dignity is not a performance. It is a habit of care that no camera can buy. Mercy without truth is a show. Truth with mercy rewrites the rules for everyone. Keep walking, but learn when to stop and hold the door open for the next person.